A police dog wouldn't stop barking at a passenger's backpack during a routine sweep. Crowds stared. Security hesitated until the bag was opened. What was inside made the entire train station fall silent. Here's the full story. But before we continue, drop your favorite dog's breed in the comments and hit that subscribe button. What's coming next? You definitely don't want to miss it. The morning rush had already begun in full force at Amsterdam Central Station. Trains groaned in and out of the platforms while the echo of footsteps merged with the distant squeal of brakes and muffled announcements. Among the steady flow of travelers, one figure stood still, methodical and alert. Officer Lena Vos. She adjusted her scarf against the frigid Dutch winter and glanced down at Rex, her Belgian Malinois partner, whose eyes were already scanning the crowd with practiced precision. Lena had spent the last 5 years in the Transit Security K9 unit. Every day started the same routine sweeps, commuter greetings, the hum of a system in motion. But she'd long since learned that routine was an illusion, one that could shatter in an instant. And this morning, there was something off. A subtle dissonance hung in the air. Maybe it was the unnatural stillness of Platform 6 or the odd scent that Rex seemed to catch moments before she noticed anything. Rex's ears twitched. His pace slowed, body stiffened. Lena instinctively scanned the platform. Nothing looked unusual. A mix of commuters, tourists snapping photos, and a few business travelers toting leather briefcases. But Rex didn't miss cues. His nose caught something her senses couldn't grasp. He halted near a bench where a navy blue backpack rested against its metal leg. Lena's heart rate elevated, but she remained composed. Rex didn't bark yet, but his intense focus was unmistakable. His training was clear. When he barked, it was never without cause. She noted the surrounding people. The backpack didn't seem to belong to anyone nearby. A man in a long overcoat, perhaps in his 30s, sat a few seats down. He was glancing at his phone, but subtly avoiding looking toward the dog. That was enough to put Lena further on edge. Then came the first bark, short, deep, and urgent. People turned. Some paused. A woman clutched her child's hand tighter. Rex barked again, sharper now, and stood with one paw forward, muscles tense. Lena called it in. Her voice stayed steady as she reported the unattended bag and her K9 partner's alert behavior. Protocol dictated a cordon, an inspection, maybe a bomb squad, but there was more to this. Lena could feel it under her skin. As security began to clear the platform, the man in the overcoat stood, not rushed, not panicked, just timed too perfectly. Rex's attention swung to him, ears folding back, growling low. The man glanced back once, just once, before disappearing into the flow of passengers exiting toward the city center. Lena noted every detail, his stride, the direction, the time, but she didn't follow him. Her focus stayed on Rex, whose body remained tense beside the bag. The Malinois began pacing in tight circles around it, not aggressively, but agitated, conflicted. It wasn't a standard narcotics reaction, nor was it the response to an explosive compound. It was different. She waited for the bomb team. As they arrived and began their scan, Lena stood back, Rex beside her, still fixated. What they found was not explosive, nor illegal in a conventional sense, but it was enough to cause confusion and immediate escalation. Inside the backpack was a small sealed container, medical grade, sterile, wrapped tightly in cooling gel packs. The exterior labeling was worn, but one symbol stood out, a red biohazard triangle. Rex barked again, not at the object, but at the air, the scent. The scanning devices picked up no active threat, but the container was quickly isolated and moved to a secure lab. Lena wasn't told what was inside, not immediately, but she noted how the technicians whispered, how their faces tightened behind their masks. One technician stared at Rex a little too long, her brows furrowed like she was calculating something. By the afternoon, Homeland officials had arrived. Not from the Netherlands, not even from the EU, from the United States. That was when Lena realized this was bigger than one train station. That night in the tiny flat she shared with Rex, Lena couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling as wind rattled the windows. Rex lay on the floor beside the bed, but not resting like usual. He was alert, listening, watching. He hadn't stopped acting strange since the backpack incident. Not nervous, but not relaxed either. Lena reviewed her report for the 5th time. Everything by the book. Every movement accounted for. But her instincts told her something was being left out of the official narrative. Something that hadn't been written down because it couldn't be explained. She remembered Rex's behavior. The conflict, the way he'd seemed, almost distressed by the object, and the man in the overcoat, he hadn't returned. No camera had clearly captured his face. His route out of the station led to a crowd and then nothing, almost like he'd vanished. The next day brought more than just frost. 2 investigators were waiting at the station when Lena reported in, one Dutch, one American. They weren't from law enforcement, they said public health, but their eyes said military. She wasn't invited to the debrief about the backpack contents. Her report was collected. Her access to the security footage was restricted. Even her team lead acted like he didn't want to know more than necessary. But it wasn't over, not for Rex. The following week, during another patrol, Rex abruptly broke formation. He bolted across Platform 12, eyes locked on a traveler wheeling a metal case. Lena called out instinctively but didn't command him to stop. She knew that look. She'd only seen it once before, on the day a courier unknowingly carried volatile precursor chemicals through the Rotterdam tunnel system. Rex didn't attack. He circled, sniffed, whined. The man, confused but cooperative, let Lena inspect the case. No biohazard markings, no illegal materials, just stacks of sealed vials marked only with numbers. A pharmaceutical company courier. Lena reported it, but she never got a follow-up. That night, Rex paced again. Not restless, purposeful. He was tracking something invisible, something beyond Lena's ability to sense, but that left a mark on the world all the same, and he was trying to tell her. By the end of the 2nd week, Lena was pulled into an unexpected meeting, a private office, off-site, unmarked. Inside was a quiet, gray-haired man who didn't introduce himself. He had 2 documents on the table. One was a reassignment order to administrative duty. The other was an NDA, international in scope. The message was clear: walk away or be buried in red tape. She stared at the papers, didn't touch them. I trust Rex, she said quietly. The man gave her a tired look. That's why we're offering you a way out. This doesn't concern you. But it does, she replied, voice steady, because it concerns him. She stood, gathered her things and left. She wasn't going to be silenced. That weekend, Lena took Rex out to the coast. Not for patrol, just to walk. Wind howled across the dunes, gulls shrieked above. Rex ran ahead, then circled back to nudge her hand. The moment felt quiet but not peaceful. As the sun dipped low over the horizon, her phone vibrated, an anonymous tip. No name, just a location. A private freight yard, Rotterdam, midnight. She almost ignored it, but Rex was already looking at her, eyes alert, waiting. They arrived just before midnight. The freight yard was deserted. A few cars parked at the far end, no guards, no movement. Until Rex tensed. Lena followed his lead. Through crates past steel containers, they reached a refrigerated unit with faded symbols barely visible under a layer of frost. Rex didn't bark. He growled. Deep, uneasy. Inside they found more vials, more sealed units. No documentation, but that wasn't the worst part. In the far corner of the container was a crate, smaller than the others, scratched, dented. Inside, curled and barely breathing, was another dog, a Malinois, gaunt, trembling, its eyes wild. Rex stood still. Then slowly he approached, touched noses, and whimpered. The air inside the refrigerated container was thin and stale. Lena felt her breath catch as she crouched beside the small crate. The other dog, a Malinois like Rex, lay barely conscious, ribs sharp beneath its thinning coat, fur damp from condensation. The moment their eyes met, something passed between the two animals, recognition maybe, or a shared pain too deep for humans to grasp. Rex didn't make a sound. He simply lowered his body until he was lying beside the trembling figure, his nose nudging gently beneath its muzzle. Lena had seen many dogs in trauma, war zones, natural disasters, illegal kennels, but never had she seen Rex react like this. Protective, grieving. There was a story here, one she didn't yet understand, but had now stepped into. She used her flashlight to scan the rest of the container. More crates, sealed, coated, a steel cabinet with small medical instruments, some broken, some bloody, no documents, nothing to identify where the contents had come from or where they were headed. Only the same faint insignia she'd seen on the biohazard container at the train station, partially scratched off. A triangle with 3 intersecting circles. She took photos. Every angle, every crate. Then she wrapped the weakened dog in her spare field jacket and called in an anonymous tip to the local animal welfare services. She didn't leave a name, didn't stay to explain. Some things couldn't be reported through the chain of command anymore. Some things had to be uncovered first. The next morning, Lena visited the animal clinic in secret. The Malinois had survived the night, barely. The vet said the dog's system showed signs of prolonged exposure to low doses of synthetic nerve agents, enough to weaken the body but not kill it. And beneath the fur, scars, small, patterned, surgical, as if someone had been testing thresholds, limits. And that wasn't the worst part. The dog didn't respond to touch. Not food, not sound, only to Rex. When he entered the room, the weakened dog lifted its head just slightly, and for a brief moment the trembling stopped. Lena knew then this wasn't just a victim. This dog was a key, maybe even a message. Whatever operation was behind the biohazard container, this dog had lived through it. That afternoon, she followed the freight container trail. The facility in Rotterdam hadn't registered its last cargo. A false invoice was on file for specialized lab freezers, shipped from Budapest 2 weeks prior. The company's listed address didn't exist, but a pattern was forming. The backpack at the train station. The vile courier. Now this container. Each event seemed isolated, but they weren't. They were pieces of a system, and something or someone was tracking Rex's movements. Lena felt it in the way the same unmarked car appeared twice outside her building, in the sudden malfunction of the station's K9 scanner logs, in the way her team lid stopped returning her messages. The more she dug, the deeper the silence became. Rex began reacting to seemingly ordinary objects. A courier's laptop bag, a crate from a pharmaceutical shipment to Brussels, even a woman's scarf left behind on a bench. Each time the reaction was different, sometimes alert, sometimes retreat. As if he was parsing out some invisible code in the world, tracing signals not meant to be sensed. Lena documented everything. She kept the logs to herself now, every reaction mapped against date, time, and location, and then the pattern emerged. The items weren't random. Each came from a location where a K9 unit had recently gone inactive due to illness, retirement, or unexplained behavioral changes. In 2 of the cases, the handler had been hospitalized after exposure to unknown irritants. In one, the dog had vanished. disappeared during a training exercise in an underground metro facility. Lena's throat tightened as she reread that report. The handler's name, Sergeant Eric Stahl, her mentor, the man who'd taught her everything in the early days of her service. Eric's dog, Juno, had been a legend in the unit until she wasn't. Eric had gone quiet after the incident, retired early. Lena hadn't heard from him in 2 years, until she got the envelope. No sender, no return address. Just one word on the paper inside: Leiden. She took Rex there the next day. Leiden was quieter than Amsterdam, quaint canals, bicycles, windmills. The kind of place that didn't make headlines, but tucked away behind the university's disused research district was an abandoned veterinary lab. The outer gate rusted, chained, but the side door was cracked open, deliberately. Inside, the air was thick with disinfectant and decay. Faded charts lined the walls, empty kennels with claw marks, filing cabinets stripped clean. Rex led the way. Every room, every hallway, he moved with caution, as if remembering a scent that didn't belong anymore. And then they found it. In the basement storage wing behind a false wall, a room sealed with biometric locks, now smashed open. Inside were dozens of archived drives, temperature-controlled units. Most had been gutted, except one. Plugged into a handheld scanner, the screen lit up with a familiar insignia, the triangle with 3 circles. This was the data cache of whatever program had created the suffering dog in the Rotterdam container. Lena pulled every file. What she read chilled her blood. The project had been called Sentinel, a clandestine initiative to develop chemical detection dogs capable of sensing synthetic compounds at concentrations beyond mechanical sensors. The trials had been brutal. Dozens of dogs failed, either dead or behaviorally unstable, but one subject line caught her eye. Subject 019B, viable, cognitive response exceptional, pairing recommended. Her hands trembled as she read the attached image file. It was Rex. Back in her flat, she sat on the floor beside him, watching him sleep. Subject 019B, enhanced, engineered, but never told. She thought of that day 3 years ago when she was introduced to him. Told he was a rescue from a raid on an illegal breeder. Told he was different, yes, but still just a dog, a partner, and he had been, in every way that mattered. Now she saw the truth. He wasn't a miracle of training. He was a survivor of something unthinkable. And someone somewhere was still trying to finish what that project had started. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. A single message. Your partner wasn't the only survivor. Meet me in Antwerp. Train station. Locker 213. No name. No trace. Just a place. And a promise of truth. By sunrise, she and Rex were back on a train. The rails clacked steadily beneath them as dawn painted gold across the Dutch countryside. Lena stared out the window, mind racing. She didn't know who had sent the message, didn't know what was in that locker, but Rex sat at her side, calm and still. He had stopped reacting to ordinary sense, stopped pacing, as if he too knew that whatever they'd been chasing was finally starting to chase back. The rhythm of the train slowed as it approached Antwerp Central, a marvel of architecture often called the railway cathedral. But this morning, beneath the ornate ceilings and intricate ironwork, Lena's eyes stayed on the people, faces in a blur, strangers that might not be strangers, movements that didn't fit the natural pulse of a busy terminal. Rex was steady beside her. He hadn't barked since Amsterdam, but his stillness wasn't peace. It was something colder. A quiet focus Lena had only seen during bomb sweeps and foreign dignitary arrivals. She didn't ask what he sensed. She didn't need to. Whatever lay ahead, they both knew it was a step deeper into a buried world. Locker 213 was tucked in the far corner of the storage corridor, Near a maintenance door and a row of dim security lights, Lena scanned the hallway. No watchers, no obvious threats. But experience had taught her that the worst dangers wore calm like a second skin. She entered the code that had been texted to her overnight. The locker creaked open. Inside was a manila envelope, a small device resembling a pager and a worn collar tag, tarnished, scratched, but still legible. The name on the tag, Juno. Her breath caught. Eric's dog, the one that had disappeared. She turned the tag over. A date had been etched crudely into the back. The 23rd of July, 21, 4 years ago. The night the project had supposedly been shut down. The pager-like device activated on contact. A simple screen lit up with coordinates and a timer. 13:30. Heavenstrat facility. Rex let out a quiet breath through his nose. His ears twitched. He was ready. So was she. The Havenstrat facility had once been a public health center on the outskirts of the city, quietly decommissioned after budget cuts and never repurposed, but its proximity to multiple transport lines and its deep sub-basement made it ideal for something else. Lena didn't call for backup. No one she trusted was in a position to help now. She parked several blocks away, entered on foot. The security system had already been disabled. Someone wanted her there, wanted her to see something. She stepped into the building, flashlight low. Rex took point as always. The halls echoed with their footfalls. Dust clung to every surface. Old medical posters fluttered in the breeze that snuck through broken windows. They found the elevator shaft open and dead. A stairwell led down into silence. Basement level 2, then deeper. Signs began appearing, makeshift, hastily removed but still partially visible under peeling paint. Observation Bay 3, Animal Response Protocol Neuroscent Trial Log. They reached a steel door, no handle, but a pressure pad hummed faintly. Rex stepped forward, nose closed, his ears pressed back. Lena exhaled and placed her palm against the pad. The door hissed open. Inside, the room was cold, sterile, too clean for a place supposedly abandoned. Monitors still flickered with data. A surveillance feed looped silently on one wall, showing K9 units undergoing exposure tests, recordings, not live but recent. Lena moved carefully. She found another terminal still logged in under a name she hadn't seen before, Dr. V. Noss. She downloaded the files, password protected but not impossible to crack. Rex stayed beside her until the sound came. A whimper. Faint, hoarse, animal. He was gone from her side in an instant, racing toward a rear corridor. Lena followed. They found the room behind a sliding panel, hidden behind an equipment closet. Inside were kennels, 8 of them, 3 occupied. The dogs inside were silent, thin, but alive. Each bore small surgical scars. Tags hung from their necks with numbered codes, no names. But one raised its head when Rex approached. Juno. Her eyes were sunken, her breathing labored, but she stood, barely. Her tail moved once, then stopped. Rex approached slowly. There was no growl, no bark, just silence. Shared recognition. Juno collapsed into Rex's side, her body trembling from the effort. He stayed there, pressing against her as if to tell her she was safe. And then Lena noticed the timer, not on a device, but on the wall screen. A facility shutdown protocol, counting down. 0 hours, 17 minutes, and 21 seconds. She scanned the room. An escape would take too long through the front. But the freight tunnel, the old emergency ventilation shaft, was viable. She wrapped Juno gently in a thermal blanket. The 2 other dogs were less stable, but still able to move. She guided them with food and steady voice, Rex leading them, never straying far from Juno. Each minute passed like a gunshot in her ears. By the time they reached the surface, only 90 seconds remained. Lena turned to see the facility from the nearby hill. It didn't explode. It didn't collapse. It simply went dark, like it had never existed. 3 days later, Lena sat in an off-grid vet clinic with Rex at her side and 3 rescue dogs sleeping nearby. Juno's vitals were stable. The other 2 were recovering. The files she'd retrieved had already been duplicated and encrypted. She'd sent them to a reporter friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Trusted, quiet, smart enough to know when to run a story and when to wait. The files confirmed what she already knew. The Sentinel project had never ended. It had been scattered, fragmented, tucked into private research firms, health tech startups, and military-adjacent research hubs. The goal remained the same: engineering animals to detect what machines could not, what even humans could not understand until it was too late. But there had been a cost. Dogs like Juno, like the silent, trembling figures rescued from cold steel cages, like Rex. Subject 019B, the one they never managed to break. Weeks passed. Lena returned to Amsterdam Central with Rex. She was no longer officially with a K9 unit, but she was there every morning, walking the platforms, watching, not for vials or weapons, but for patterns, for pieces of a broken system trying to hide in plain sight. One morning, a little boy approached her on Platform 6. He couldn't have been more than 8, holding his mother's hand. The boy pointed to Rex and asked if he could say hello. Lena nodded. Rex, battle-worn, scarred, engineered in a lab that never should have existed, sat and wagged his tail, gentle as ever. The boy hugged his neck, and Rex let him. As they walked away, the mother whispered something about heroes and thanked Lena. She didn't correct her. She just smiled and looked down at her partner, the dog who had never asked to be more than what he was, but chose to be something greater. Because in the end, it wasn't the scent markers or the surgical enhancements that made Rex extraordinary. It was the way he trusted, the way he protected, the way he stood between darkness and the people who never even knew they were in danger. And in the silence of the terminal, where thousands moved each day, no one remembered the backpack or the sealed container or the man who vanished into the crowd, but Lena did, and Rex did, and that was enough. Because some heroes don't wear medals, some just walk beside you, tail wagging, eyes sharp, heart unbreakable. If you like these kind of stories, wait till you see what's coming next. These dogs are doing things no one's talking about. Make sure you're subscribed and give this video a like, because the next rescue might just be the most unbelievable one yet.